It is a playoff edition of the Locked On crossover. We have Locked On Packers. I'm Peter Bukowski, and from Locked On 49ers, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker. Guys, we are here. It is a rematch of the 2019 NFC Championship game, an opportunity for the 49ers to put their stamp on this rivalry right now, an opportunity for the Packers to get a little bit of revenge. We've got storylines all over the place. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. We're excited. I mean, who would have thought the 49ers would be here? Start the season off 2-4, then 3-5, and all of a sudden, divisional round playoffs against the Green Bay Packers.
Well, you know who thought the 49ers would be here? The Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur said on Wednesday that during the bye week, they did extra prep on the 49ers, anticipating them beating the Cowboys. So not only was everyone gambling on the 49ers, but the Packers themselves were like, yeah, we think Dallas is a fraud.
In their head, because that's the team the Packers don't want to face, the 49ers, right?
I think that's probably true. I mean, certainly for fans, they would much rather have seen the Rams in this spot, having already beaten the Rams this season. I mean, the Packers beat the 49ers too, but they don't have the same sort of scar tissue, right? So I've been talking about that early week matchup between these two teams, the Mason Crosby field goal at the end. There are some things that I think we can take from that, but I think there's a lot of ways in which this has changed for San Francisco. What do you think are the biggest differences for the 49ers from that game to now?
There are quite a few differences, especially when you look at just the way that the roster and the players. When you look at the week 3 performance, the 49ers, Elijah Mitchell did not play. Deebo Samuel, who's now utilized as like this hybrid super player, had 0 rushing yards. Arden Key, who's been a big push down the stretch with pass rush productivity for the 49ers, he only had 3 snaps in that game. Josh Norman and Deommodore Lenoir played, and they definitely contributed to kind of letting Davante Adams get off down the stretch in that game. And Juwan Jennings, who had several key first down catches against the Dallas Cowboys, on 3rd down, he didn't play at all. So there are a lot of, kind of moving pieces that kind of help the 49ers in a sense. But I know the Packers, they also have some guys out as well.
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. This team is going to look very different, even than the one that we saw in Week 18, which was just 2 weeks ago. The Deebo Samuel piece of this is really interesting, and Brian and I were talking before we jumped on. Brian, can you explain for my listeners how this Deebo Samuel as running back thing happened? Because this is something that when I look at any matchup, this is the one that I'm most concerned about. Because you put Deebo Samuel out, I feel pretty good about the Packers corners, as good as you can feel against someone as good as Deebo Samuel, right? But Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes played him well the first time these two matched up in what was Eric Stokes' first start. But he has become this weapon, and the Packers have struggled when you put your receiver in the backfield and let him run routes. They haven't had answers for that. So how did this come to happen?
It happened really organically, and 49ers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel recently talked about it, and it wasn't planned. Obviously, Deebo Samuel was a wide receiver. Last year, especially, he was used in a lot of gadgety ways with an injured Jimmy Garoppolo, and the 49ers were really hurt and just finding ways to get the ball in his hands because he's so good after the catch. But started handing him the ball a little bit, started, experimenting with different formations and more motioning him into the backfield. And then they started to realize as they gave him the ball as a running back, this guy's pretty good as just a true running back, and give it to him more and more. And then you start to realize, holy crap, this guy's actually a legitimate running back, like a pure running back. Deebo Samuel would be among the best in the league. I'm convinced of that now that I've seen him run, because he is so good. He's got pure vision. He's got power. He would be the heaviest running back on the 49ers at 220 pounds too. So, he's built that way. And he was always sort of a receiver that was built like a running back. And now he's a true hybrid. And so the more they used him, the more they realized they could do. So it was not something they planned at all, but it just kind of happened. And the more they give him, the better he is with it. So it's been pretty phenomenal to watch the development of Deebo Samuel and seeing what he can do. And really, I've used the term magic. He has this magic ability of finding where to go, especially when they get him on the outside to the corner, and being able to get to the edge and using that burst and using his vision and then running through arm tackles. It's been phenomenal. So he's become one of the best weapons in the NFL.
Yeah, how many receivers can you run gap scheme power? These power runs with? I mean, it's incredible.
And the power runs for him is a little bit newer. They originally they like to keep him a little bit more on the outside. Then teams are like, you know what, you guys are just doing all these tosses with Debo, and he's running around the corner. Well, we're gonna just take that away. So now they started doing this like toss counter to him. So they'll kind of toss it straight back to him, and then he'll cut it back, and he's been picking up yards that way. I think one thing that is interesting, with his usage as a running back, he had 8 touchdowns this year, and he averaged over 16 yards per carry on those 8 touchdowns. So it's not like he's someone that is, I'm inside the 6-yard line and scoring touchdowns. It's like,
Right.
no, like, he's getting around the 20, 25, 10, wherever it is, and he's scoring from there. And that's been intriguing as well.
Yeah, and his numbers extrapolated out. If he, it was Mike Renner from Pro Football Focus put this out there. If he had the same amount of carries with his production and his efficiency as Jonathan Taylor did, he would have had 2,100 rushing yards this season and 43 touchdowns.
That's wild. It doesn't quite work like that, as we know with running backs. The more hits you take, the less efficient you become. But they seem to have found a really scary, frankly, balance of what he can be. It doesn't even seem like they've scratched the surface on what they can do with him as a receiver aligned in the backfield. A lot of his most dangerous stuff is on these runs. He used to be a killer on end arounds and these reverse, as Croc said, gadget plays. Now that they can just run, like they could legit, if they wanted to, just run inside zone with Devo. Like that is wild. Croc, I want to ask you about the defense though, because this is a defense that they pressured the Cowboys into submission last week. And this was supposed to be a Cowboys offensive line that would be able to handle these 4-man pressures. And it's Dak Prescott who's able to process quickly pre and post snap. And they beguiled Dak with the coverage. No one seemed to be open. And they were getting pressure with 4 even in the second half when Nick Bosa was not out there. So how did that happen, that this group, you mentioned some of the names, it's not just the Eric Armsteads and Nick Bosa's of the world that's getting this done?
Yeah, Arden Key. Gosh, I can't even think of the guy that came over from Houston Texans. What his name is, number 92.
Charles Menahu, yeah.
Menahu,
6th-round pick.
Yeah, so Menahu and all these other guys, Givens, he's getting in there from the interior. DJ Jones, those guys are making plays consistently in the backfield, and they had to do that against the Dallas Cowboys. One weakness of Dak Prescott was, when you just drop guys in the coverage, he kind of struggles with that. When you blitz him, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. So the 49ers said, you know what? We're not going to blitz him a whole lot. We have to get there with 4, and we have to figure it out. And, down the stretch, the 49ers pass rush has been terrific, and they continued against the Dallas Cowboys. I think one thing that kind of caught me off guard a little bit was just how much success some of these guys had. We talked about Menahu, and there's several clips of him bullying Tyron Smith. And that's not something that I think anyone anticipated, including Dak Prescott, who was constantly under duress for most of that game. So the front did a really good job. Obviously, the back end were able to play off of that well.
Brian, Jimmy Garoppolo, less than 100% last week. Started off the game pretty well, then apparently got a sprained shoulder. It is very difficult to pinpoint exactly when that happened, but the moral of the story is it hurts. He was asked which is a bigger problem for him, and he answered yes, which is just great. But not great from a football sense, especially because we're looking at temperatures in the teens. How much do you think this is going to affect the way Kyle Shanahan calls this game? Because we know he's not afraid to just say, Jimmy, just hand the ball off.
I would not be shocked at all if they went as run heavy as they did in the playoffs a couple of years ago against the Packers and
the Vikings that same season.
And the Vikings, right. And I think an injured Jimmy Garoppolo is part of it. I think just a Jimmy Garoppolo that, and saw it last week, was it the hurt shoulder or is it just classic Jimmy? And we've talked about that a lot on the podcast. Croc's not a believer that the injury is affecting him at all because it's the same old Jimmy. He's going to throw one to the other team. It's what happens. So you can avoid him throwing one to the other team if you just run the heck out of the ball. And if you're having success doing it, which the 49ers will hope to, and I think they can have some success on the ground against the Packers. And in some cases, the Packers should probably dare the 49ers to throw it as much as possible. So I think that's the chess match we're going to see. Jimmy's a tough guy. I think that's something that the 49ers love. His teammates love him for it. The coaching staff and front office love him because he's able to play through these injuries. Will it hamper him? I have no idea. It'll probably, even if it does, end up looking like the same old Jimmy, and he was able to still get the ball out in the short to intermediate zone, which is where he lives. So I think the 49ers will be okay as far as the injury stuff goes with Jimmy Garoppolo.